everyone. Happy Darwin Day, and welcome to another episode of the Atheist Experience. I'm your host, Russell Glasser, and with me today is Don Baker.
Hey, good to be here.
Good to see you, Don. You're going to be talking to us about the failure of the Second Coming today.
Right.
Another in your incredibly popular Failure of Things series.
Failure of Things.
Today is Sunday, February 12th, 2012. It is Darwin Day, which I understand is kind of randomized in the same way that President's Day, but today is the actual birthday of Charles Darwin, so go Chuck. We are a live call-in public access atheist television show based in Austin, Texas, dedicated to promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. We're also available through live streaming video at ustream.tv. The official Atheist Experience website is www.atheist-experience.com. And we're sponsored by the Atheist Community of Austin, a nonprofit organization that you can find at www.atheist-community.org. You can provide feedback by commenting on the official show blog at freethoughtblogs.com/AXP. Or you can email us at tv@atheist-community.org. Check out our other regular shows, which you can also see via the ACA website, The Nonprofits and Godless Bitches. If you enjoyed the show today, please come join us for dinner after the show, beginning around 6 at El Arroyo on 1624 West 5th Street here in Austin. And I just wanted to mention, for the record, that today in the studio audience we've got, I think, the most foreigners that we've ever had at one time. We've got a couple from Perth, Australia. Hi guys.
Yay.
And a guy from Montreal.
Yay! That's great.
So they came all the way down here
To have dinner with us.
And that's right. One of the things that our guests have pointed out, actually, is that people who see us on YouTube cannot tell what these things are.
Oh, you might want to do a quick introduction.
All right, so for those of you who are new to the show, this is our handmade flying spaghetti monster.
Beth made that.
Right, Matt's wife. And this is Muhammad the Sacred Cow. Moo. And
Okay.
you can see him featuring prominently when Martin plays with him when he's on.
Oh, okay. Part of our geekosphere here.
Yeah. So, over to you, Don.
Okay, very good. Well, as you mentioned, I've done a number of shows on the failures of Christianity, and I think I'll be doing them for quite a long time. In the past, I've talked about the failure of the Christian-based abortion policy, the failure of the genocide of the Jews, the failure of the Catholic pedophilia scandal, the failure of prayer.
Today, I think the Catholic pedophilia scandal was pretty successful.
Well,
depends on how you look at it.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, today I'm going to talk about the failure of the Second Coming. Hopefully, these things will wake people up and say, oh, well, gosh, if this God-based thing is failing all the time, maybe there's something wrong with this, and maybe there is no such God, and maybe Christianity is a fraud. So that's my hope, is that eventually somebody will wake up. So, Christians believe they're going to go to heaven, right? They're going to go, when they die, they're going to go live with Jesus or God and live in eternal bliss. And according to some folks, you're going to float around in the clouds all day playing harps and praising God for all eternity. And gosh, does that sound boring. But Christians think this is a good plan. But one person's theology is just about as good as anybody else's, and there's even more lurid ideas of what's in heaven. So why don't we go to the theology of C.S. Lewis, one of the great apologists concerning heaven. I'm going to read a paragraph of his. It's a little bit long, but it's worth reading. One point must be touched on, because though I kept silence, it would be nonetheless present in most readers' minds. The letter and spirit of Scripture and all of Christianity forbid us to suppose life in the new creation will be a sexual life. And this reduces our imagination to the withering alternative of either bodies which are hardly recognizable as human bodies, or else that of a perpetual fast. As regards to the fast, I think our present outlook might be like that of a small boy who, on being told that the sex act was the highest bodily pleasure, that should immediately ask whether you ate chocolates at the same time. On receiving the answer no, he might regard the absence of chocolates as the chief characteristic of sexuality. In vain you would try to tell him that the reason why lovers in their carnal raptures don't bother about chocolates is they have something better to think of. The boy knows chocolate, he doesn't know the positive thing that excludes it. We are in the same position. We know the sexual life, we do not know except in glimpses of the other thing which in heaven will leave no room for it. Hence where fullness awaits us, we anticipate in fasting. In denying that sexual life, as we now understand it, makes any part of the final beatitude, it is not, of course, necessary to suppose that the distinction of sexes will disappear. What is no longer needed for biological purposes may be expected to survive for splendor.
Excuse me, Mr. Lewis? Somebody forgot to tell me that after you start having sex, you're never allowed to eat chocolate again. Right. I missed the memo on that one.
Right. Okay, let me finish. Sexuality is an instrument of both virginity and conjugal virtue. Neither men nor women will be asked to throw away their weapons once they have used victoriously. It is the beaten and the fugitives who throw away their swords. The conquerors sheathe theirs and retain them. Transsexual would be a better word than sexless for the heavenly life. Pretty fun, huh? This is from C.S. Lewis, Miracles, a Preliminary Study, and this is from chapter 16, which is up on our website, by the way. Chapter
obviously
16.
He wrote that way before the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
I guess so, transsex. So, given all this transsex, what could possibly top it? I mean, what could be better than what he just described? It's pretty darn wonderful. So for many Christians, the second coming of Jesus seems to be the climax that even tops that. But the second coming is a failure. First off, it didn't happen, and it's not going to happen. It's a failed prophecy. Nobody can seem to agree on the end times theology yet. It's a big moneymaker. And the belief has been nothing but harmful for non-believers. So much of today's show draws from an article called The Lowdown on God's Showdown by Edward Babinski, which you can find pretty easily on the web. So what is the second coming? The second coming is the triumphant return of Jesus to earth, where he supposedly raises the dead, who maybe are in heaven. Who knows? We think dead people are in heaven. I'm not quite sure where they're coming from. He's going to judge the living and the dead, and he's going to set up the kingdom of God on earth. So it seems like a bad thing for the people already in heaven. They have to leave this transsex wonderful stuff and come back to heaven, come back to earth, and hang out with all these smelly risen dead people and unimplanted embryos everywhere. And it seems like a big loser for people who are already dead and in heaven. But if you're already here and a follower, the second coming might be a good thing. You get raptured, you get sucked up into heaven to a little free ride to start it all off, kind of like that little pig on that commercial, pure adrenaline. Whee! Okay, but there's not much mention about how you're going to get back to earth, so maybe you're going to fall, I don't know. So this is the biggest biblical prophecy in the entire Bible. And so the question is, when will this big event occur? Well, according to Paul in 1 Thessalonians 4:16 through 17, for the Lord himself shall descend from heaven with a shout, and the voice of the archangel, and the trump of God, and the dead in Christ shall rise first. Then we, which are alive and remain, shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, and so shall we ever be with the Lord. So Paul here, in his first person account, thought that he would be one of the ones going up. So he was pretty sure it was going to be in his lifetime. There's more here from Paul, 1 Corinthians 7:27 to 29. He's talking, okay, let me cut to the chase here. He's talking about people who are married and single and these sorts of things, and basically saying not to change your state. And then he says, but this I say, brethren, the time is short, it remaineth that both they that have wives be as though they had none. And so the idea here is abstain from sex because it's just going to complicate things when you go up to, when this second coming happens. And so every single Christian who's ever had a kid has sort of admitted that they think Paul's a liar, right? Because if you were following Paul's advice, you wouldn't be having any sex or any children. So
or more likely, they just didn't know or think about that, because people generally don't read the whole Bible.
Right, right. It's a relatively small quote. In Romans 8:18, for I reckon that the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory which shall be received in us. So he again thinks he's going to be part of that. In 1 John 2:18, little children, it is the last time, and as ye have heard that Antichrist shall come, even now there are many antichrists, whereby we know that it is the last time. So this alludes to a list that we'll talk about in a second. Paul is always using the word mellow, which I think is a ancient Hebrew word that basically means immediately, about to do, about to suffer something, and so this is very clear, immediate language. So what about this list, the things to watch out for? In Matthew 24:3, Jesus is asked, tell us these things, what shall these things be? What will be the sign of thy coming? And the answer includes things like wars, rumors of wars, nations shall rise against other nations, kingdom against kingdoms, famines, pestilences, earthquakes, false prophets shall arrive and deceive many, which we just talked about. And the gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world. This is not the complete list, but most of it. And as it turns out, all of these things actually occurred in Paul's lifetime, right? There's always wars, there's always
all of those
famines.
things happen all the time, which is why evangelists are always telling us, look, it's the end times.
Exactly, it's always the end times, right? So maybe Paul's a bad witness. Maybe we need to go off to Jesus. What does Jesus say? Well, in Matthew 10:23, he says, but when they persecute you in the city, flee to another. So verily I say unto you, ye shall not have gone over all the cities of Israel until the Son of Man be come. So this is the second coming, the reference to the second coming. So they did preach to all the cities in their lifetime, and their lifetime has long been over. Matthew 16:27-28. For the Son of Man, this is Jesus again, for the Son of Man shall come in the glory of his Father with his angels, and then shall reward every man according to his works. Verily I say unto you, there shall be some standing here which shall not taste of death till they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. So it was very clear that the people alive right then were the ones that are going to witness this thing.
Do you know what excuse they give for that one?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Do you want,
we'll hit that in a second. Yeah,
okay.
We'll hit that in a second. A couple more quotes. These are again from Jesus, Matthew 24:34. Verily I say unto you, this generation shall not pass until all these things be filled. Mark 13:30. Verily I say unto you, this generation shall not pass till all these things be done. Luke 21:32. Verily I say unto you, this generation shall not pass away until all be fulfilled. So generation out of Jesus' mouth in the Bible, if you care about all that, always refers to the people of this particular age, and he was addressing the people of that generation who are going to, and that generation is long gone. So yes, there's spin. There's spin. One of the things they say is in 2 Peter 3:18, there's some spin from Paul here. But beloved, be not ignorant of this one thing, that one day is with the Lord as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years as one day. Okay. Well, my response to that is if I can redefine a few words, I can make anything true. So, bullshit. This is also written after it was very clear. This is written late in the lifetime of Paul. It was very clear that the predictions were false, right? By then they concluded they got a problem here, and so they had to bandage it somehow. But the earlier words of Jesus and Paul make it very, very, very clear that the second coming was going to be in their lifetime. They were going to witness it. It's going to be part of their thing. And so this is a failure. This is a very clear failure, and you don't need to look very hard in the Bible to figure that out. So, failure there. So what's the real fun of the second coming? What I think makes it so popular is this sort of thing. From Matthew 13:41-43. The Son of Man shall send forth his angels, and they shall gather out of the kingdom all things that offend, and with them which do iniquity, and shall cast them into a furnace of fire. There shall be wailing and gnashing of teeth. Isn't that wonderful? Luke 17, 28
It's
through 30.
Jack Chick's favorite verse.
Yes, that's a good one, yeah. Luke 17, 28 through 30, it was the same as in the days of Lot. People were eating and drinking, buying and selling, planting and building, but the day Lot left Sodom, fire and sulfur rained down from heaven and destroyed them all. It will be just like this on the day of the Son of Man is revealed. So this is Schadenfreude. This is taking enjoyment in other people's suffering. And that's just kind of in my mind, a synonym or a euphemism for sadism. So believers will be swept up in the clouds and watched as non-believers are tortured and killed. And this they wait for in giddy anticipation. So isn't that wonderful? And so this is why I think of the rapture stuff as snuff porn, because you're really just enjoying this whole idea that everybody else is going to die for being a non-believer, and you get to watch the whole thing. Anyway, I think it's pretty sick. So, but the sadism is a big business. There's been fire and brimstone preachers throughout the ages. There's been end-of-world prognosticators in every age, thousands of them. Most recently, the most famous one was Harold Camping, who, of course, his prediction was false, but it didn't prevent him from making a lot of money in the process.
I don't know that he made a lot of money. I mean,
well, he's pretty rich. Maybe he didn't
a lot of money on that thing.
Yeah, well, who knows what his motivation is? Maybe he drank the Kool-Aid and he really believes that stuff, you know? There in the 19th century, there's this pre-tribulation, post-tribulation dispensationalism, trying to add a lot of different spins and drama to this whole thing. In the 70s, the Hal Lindsey book, The Late Great Planet Earth, sold 15 to 30 million copies. I don't know why it's such a wide range. Tim LaHaye's Left Behind series sold tens of millions of copies, movies, video games. So there have been generations of gullible, yearning people to be the generation. And I think this whole thing is kind of sad and twisted because they're sort of anxious for the end of the world. And that's a very common theme in Christianity. So it's a bad thing for us non-believers, right? It's a bad thing for us for a number of reasons. One is foreign policy. We have powerful ministers like John Hagee in San Antonio who are actually lobbying Congress to influence foreign policy, especially with regard to Israel, to orchestrate the end times. And what a terrible reason to lobby for foreign policy. This is a group of people called Christian Zionists, and there's a fair number of them in the United States, and they do exert a fair influence on Israel and our policies towards Israel. And it's really sort of in result of making Israel a pawn in their fantasies so that they can maybe make the second coming happen or what. So sadly, Israel on the other side of the equation believes, many of the folks there believe that God gave the land there to Abraham and his descendants, and that they sort of belong in that land. So it's two kind of twisted biblical fantasies playing out in modern times. This is all pretty sad. Why it's bad for us? The environment. Well, who cares about the environment if the world's going to end so soon? Why bother, right? So we have people like James Watt, who was the Secretary of the Interior for Ronald Reagan. He said two great quotes. One is, "We don't have to protect the environment. The second coming is at hand." So this is an elected official using this craziness to run his department. Another one, "My responsibility to follow the scripture is to follow the scriptures which call on us to occupy the land until Jesus returns." So these are, you know, he kind of stood out in the fact that he was open about it. But I think that in a lot of Republican administrations, especially, we'll see people with these sorts of mindsets. I think that this mindset is behind the religious interest in global climate change denial, right? Because it's a loser. If the world's going to end soon, why bother worrying about this? Plus, you have people like Rush Limbaugh who say God would not create humans in such a way that we would destroy our own planet and environment. So he doesn't believe that there's any need to deal with global warming.
Basically anything that involves any kind of long-term thinking could be dismissed. I mean, you know, you get to things like, you know, peak oil issues.
Oh, sure. And it's all very much in this idea of Jesus saying, well, don't plan for the future, don't save for the future.
Yeah, he said that.
Yeah, and that was the reason, is the world was going to end so soon. It's like, why bother? Why bother? Jesus never really talked very much about morality, right? Because if people are going to live a
By
generation...
the way, I'm not sure that you got to the excuse I was thinking about how some of you standing here will not taste death. I've heard some apologists say that there are still a couple of really, really old guys hanging around who were there
but they didn't
when
die,
Jesus
they were
was
resurrected. Yeah.
Nobody's noticed them, but
Well, there's a lot of this sort of spin. Let me finish up here. Another reason why it's bad for us is I think it creates a live and let die attitude that we often hear veiled threats from our Christian friends who say, well, when you die, God will show his judgment to you, or you're going to go to hell. Here's a quote from Anne Graham Lotz, who's the daughter of Reverend Billy Graham. She says, within my lifetime, I have seen a fulfillment of every sign that Jesus gave his disciples 2,000 years ago. Not only have I seen the signs, but I've observed local and national and global birth pains increase in astonishing frequency and intensity. I'm convinced that the kingdom of this world are about to give birth to the kingdoms of God.
Like we said earlier, wars, famines, plagues, earthquakes are happening all the freaking time. I mean, there is no generation that has none of those things.
That's right. So what reason would a Christian have to save the life or even aid a non-believer if they were, if they didn't have any chance of converting this person? What reason would a Christian have to care about future generations, right? Their grandkids that may not be even born. So in summary, the theological concept of heaven and the end times is at best a muddle. It makes no sense. There's a lot of folks that claim they understand it, and they disagree with other folks that claim they understand it, and there's no real consensus. Jesus and Paul were clearly liars, so this is they're false prophets. No one should take this second coming idea very seriously. Yet many people believe in this crap, and it's popular with those of the sadistic bent, I believe. And the believers and the people who those believers elect to public office make the world a worse place for everybody else. So the second coming is a failure, no matter how you slice it.
Okay. Thanks for that, Don.
Sure.
So we're going to go to calls now, and we've got Emanual in California.
Hi, how are you doing?
Fine, how are you?
I'm doing well. Well, I have something that I want to talk about really quickly on the second coming. Again, there's a lot of stuff that goes into that. I think when you take kind of verses out of context, that you can tend to skew them a little bit. So I think there's a little bit of that in there, but there's no time for that. So I'm just going to ask my question. Is that okay?
Yeah,
sure.
Is there some particular context you had in mind that makes those sound better?
Well, I'd have to call back next week after doing my research. I don't want to speak off the head because, I want to make sure I know what I'm talking about. Unlike some of the callers who call into your show. So.
All right, very good.
Okay.
Go on with your question then.
Okay. Last week, I believe it was Mark. He used an analogy. A caller called in about how if you reject the existence of God, then that's like accepting, our universe in which God doesn't exist. And he said, no, that's not true. And the evidence he used was a trial in which, you're either guilty or not guilty. And so just because you say they're not guilty doesn't mean they're innocent, correct?
Yeah, I mean, generally the point is that the prosecution has to often prove things beyond a shadow of a doubt, whereas the defense just has to have enough doubt that there's not a good reason to convict.
Okay. I mean, the thing about it is the reason why that's not really a full picture of kind of when you're speculating on the origin of the universe is because there are really only two things that could be implicated here. And so what we're saying, what atheists are basically saying, it's really they reject the belief that there is a God.
Why
and
two?
So, right, correct?
Why two?
Why two? Well, okay, I can explain. All right, so let's in thinking about the universe, right? So we see things, we can observe things, things exist. So that's something that we know.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So now going back to the beginning, either everything came from nothing, correct, or something came from nothing and then made everything, or something has always existed, persistent existence, correct?
You know, there's an idea in physics that that time started when the universe began, and there was no notion of before. So I really kind of I don't think we even know enough to say we know what the possibilities are.
Right.
Well,
I mean, there are a lot of
Go ahead.
yeah. No, I mean there are a whole lot of different ways to speculate about the origin of the universe. I mean, there could be multiple universes. There could be you know, what Don said, that the concept of before is really kind of meaningless. You know, there are a variety of questions, but presumably the one that you've hitched your wagon to is that there's an omnipotent being who made everything on purpose.
Well, let's revisit kind of what you're saying, what you were saying about there's many, you know, options. Okay. All those options would boil down really to either nothing has existed previously, and then something came from nothing. So there was previously nothing, not energy, not matter, not anything, and everything came from that. Or there's persistent existence, either the oscillating universe, which has always been there, just, you know, going through various stages of you know, whatever the bulk was doing, or whatever, you know, however many big bangs and dimensions and universes were happening, right? Or that there was a supernatural being who was always there.
Where did I mean, you know, the supernatural injection come in as a different thing? I mean, presumably you're going to say that thing existed forever, right?
Yeah, he did.
Yes.
So isn't that just the same as one of your other options?
That's called special pleading, by the way. That's a logical fallacy of you say, well, nothing can exist without having been created, but this God I invented has that property.
No. I'm not saying nothing can exist without ever being created. I will submit to you that it is a possibility that there is an oscillating universe in which it's going through various stages of banging and collapsing. But then either way, either something, there's persistent existence, right, where either matter and energy have always existed or in some sort of state, nature, or the universe has always existed.
What we're really doing is we're arguing a lot of points about physics. Let's say I don't know. Let's say I don't know how the universe began. Is it my responsibility to come up with that so that I to come up with an answer so that you know I can disprove a God? Is that what you're saying?
No, that's not what I'm saying. But then, okay, now that we're there, I can continue with my analogy.
All right.
So we have a courtroom, right, where, you know, someone is either guilty or not guilty. But what we really have is a situation in which there are, I guess you could say, two guilty parties. You know,
well, we're judging a particular question, right? Was there a God that created the universe? I think is the question.
We're judging the particular question of what has persistent existence. Because unless you believe that nothing, you know, everything came from nothing or from non-existence, then we can, I think, agree that there has been persistent existence, that there was never nothing, because there is something now, and if there was nothing, there would be nothing to cause the something.
I don't agree with that.
I don't think we can assume that. How do you jump to that conclusion?
Okay.
Physicists think
we can talk about. I mean, we can kind of logically think about this. You don't want to assume that nothing can come from, that something can't come from nothing. That's something you would rather not assume, correct?
I don't want to assume anything because I don't want to make up things that I don't know without evidence.
What do you mean by nothing exactly? Do you mean a vacuum?
No, not a vacuum, because a vacuum can have energy. Something, not energy, not matter, nothing.
Okay.
Like literally nothing.
Well,
do you agree that nothing has never existed? Like literally nothing?
No, I just said I don't think we can assume that.
Okay.
We don't know, I think, is the answer. We don't know is the answer.
Right.
Well, the thing is, I think we can logically speculate from what we know of the, because that's what we're using, and that's what evidence is our observations of the natural world, etc.
Right. So we don't have any evidence that there is this nothing that you talk about, but you want to sort of insert it before the universe.
No, he wants to say there definitely was never nothing. I mean, there was always something, is what he's wanting to say. And I'm saying I don't think we can make the assumption either way because we don't know what happened before the Big Bang.
That's right. That's right.
Oh, all right. Okay. I'll give you that. We'll let you kind of believe. I mean, I'll allow you to think that something can come from nothing. Although if you cannot explain how that could be, then that in and of itself is a very poor. It's almost like saying that there was a split.
Well, then
monster before the
explain
universe,
where your
and
God came from. Then,
if I didn't know the cause of lightning, and you told me that God created lightning, would God exist?
That doesn't apply to this question, because I'm not saying
it's
the
the same
same.
kind of
It's
thing.
an analogous argument.
Okay, how is it analogous to something coming from nothing? Because we understand what something is. We understand
Well,
that is the
Lightning was
analogous.
very mysterious for many, many years. Maybe it's mysterious to me.
yeah, it used to be the case that people didn't know where lightning came from, and so they made up like Zeus sitting on Mount Olympus throwing lightning that he forged at his. I mean, I don't know the details of that one, but
Then Christians had a problem because they built their churches on hills and got
Right,
a lot of
but,
lightning
yeah, that's
bolts along the
irrelevant.
way.
So I mean, it's very tempting when you don't know the answer to a thing to just make up a magic man who explains everything and does not himself need any explanation.
I'm not trying to make up a magic man. Well, let's go on from there. So let's say, okay, it's possible that everything came from nothing. Let's say it's possible, but it's more likely that the universe has had persistent existence, which is why scientists are speculating.
How do you know that?
Before the Big Bang there was a bulk. There's a bulk in existence, because I mean this is just, it's one of those things where it's like, if there's literally nothing, then for something to come into being, it would have to have pre-existence before itself. Because
Your argument assumes there's a time before the beginning of the universe, which I think is false according to the current thinking of physics.
The current thinking of physics is speculating on what could have caused the Big Bang.
Yes.
So, a collapsing, an expanding and collapsing universe.
That's
and
not
speculating
that's
that
not
there was a bulk
assumed
where
by
that, where
physics.
this thing is
No.
taking place. Oh, sure. Go ahead.
That's not assumed by physics. That's just one of many hypotheses about where the universe might have come from.
This is true. It's one of many hypotheses. But otherwise, why wouldn't they just say, what, before the Big Bang there was nothing, and then
Because they don't
we could
know.
just speculate.
Because the concept of before doesn't make sense here.
Right.
And I think that's the flaw in your argument. Is okay. So today I'm going to champion this view of physics, that there was no time before the beginning of the universe. Okay.
Okay.
Let's say that's the physicist's final answer, which I'll admit right now it isn't. It isn't. But
Okay.
it's a coherent statement from physicists that are consistent with the facts today, and may be proven wrong in the future. But let's go with that. Then in that case, if you go with that, then the whole idea of the time before the universe is a nonsensical concept. It doesn't make sense.
I see. So time began with the universe.
Yes.
And then the universe doesn't have a cause.
Yes.
Okay. So the universe is an uncaused.
Like he said, that's
to my understanding of this physics. And I'm not a physicist.
And if you're saying that if the place you're going is that you think there has to be an uncaused cause, you have to first demonstrate that the universe is not that thing, or you have to demonstrate.
Exactly. No, I'm not saying the universe can't be that thing. I think
Right.
I think the universe can. It's possible.
Okay.
Based on the evidence that the universe can be the uncaused cause. What I'm saying
So that's
is that
one
there must be an
possibility.
uncaused cause, as opposed to something that was caused that was uncaused because there was nothing to cause.
Well,
it,
at
which is
the
what you're speculating.
quantum level of our reality, at that's those small scales, there are uncaused causes, right? There's things like nuclear decay in atoms, right? For uranium or whatever. These are uncaused causes that happen. We can measure them statistically, but we can't know when they're going to occur. So there are these spontaneous things that happen, and we know about that from quantum physics.
And I think one of the things that Lawrence Krauss says that's interesting is that interactions where equal numbers of particles and antiparticles are just coming into existence all the time. I mean, they cancel each other out, so they're still essentially zero stuff.
Yeah, this is called zero-point energy.
Right.
Right.
Okay, that means that it always existed then, that they were constantly coming in and out of existence as opposed to having not existed before,
But
and then
not-
all of a sudden a ton of them come out of
But
nowhere.
not in a way that's caused.
Not in a way
necessarily.
so something that wasn't before became without a cause. So it's something that would need a cause because it wasn't there before. Like not before, but it's like if something occurred, it needs a cause. You understand? Unless it's an uncaused cause, which is what you're saying.
So this whole first cause argument that I think you're trying to go around or treading on the path of is been made false by quantum mechanics or quantum physics. Right? There are uncaused causes.
Or when you say it's made false, what you mean is it doesn't necessarily lead to a God. There's nothing in there that indicates that some kind of intelligence is involved in those original.
I agree. I agree. I'm not trying to prove that God exists. What I'm trying to say is we don't know. This is exactly what I want, actually, because what we're saying is we don't know. All right.
Well, we could have told you that at the beginning.
Exactly.
We don't see any evidence for this thing, so why should we believe it? We don't see any evidence for a God, so why should we believe it?
Okay, I understand, but what is the evidence for a perpetual universe or a universe that could come without a cause? What is the evidence for that? Why is that the default?
There's not sufficient evidence to conclusively demonstrate that any of the possibilities is a reality. And when you say that God is just, God or not God is the choice, that's like saying, my choices for dinner are scrambled eggs or not scrambled eggs. It's like scrambled eggs is one possibility, and you could say that it's a genuine dichotomy where you either have scrambled eggs or you don't. But that doesn't really capture all the thousands of options that I actually have when I choose what to eat for dinner.
It does capture. It is completely and 100% descriptive. You can't have not eggs and not eggs, right? Correct? You can't. It's impossible,
I guess
right?
if you're making a logical argument,
if you want to be pedantic about it.
Yeah.
That's
But
logic.
with regard to belief, there's always a third option that you just don't believe. You can believe one thing, you can believe another thing, or you can just not believe.
Right. It's like if you ask me, what did Louis XIV have for breakfast the morning he was killed? I could say, I don't know, but I don't think it was scrambled eggs. I might have a good reason to say I don't think it was scrambled eggs, but that doesn't mean that I'm stating definitely what it was.
I agreed. So then we agree that you could say King Louis, we believe he didn't have scrambled eggs. We don't know what he had. But I believe, for whatever reason, because I have no evidence for what he did have, right? Okay. And I have no evidence that he necessarily did not have scrambled eggs. Why is there a default claim in that, is what I'm saying. Why would him not having scrambled eggs be the default, and then everyone would have to prove that he did have scrambled eggs if that wanted to be the case?
Well, it depends on what kind of claim you're making. Because if you're coming in here and saying, I know that King Louis XIV had scrambled eggs that morning, I could just say,
That's a positive claim.
Why do you think that? And if you said, I don't know, I just feel it, then I could say, I don't believe you. That doesn't mean I know that Louis XIV didn't have scrambled eggs, but it does mean that I don't think that that I continue to withhold judgment because I don't think that you have a good reason to think that that he had scrambled eggs.
Okay,
which is the same thing. Which is really the same thing that we say about God, which is that's a possibility, but the certainty that is usually presented when people talk about God isn't warranted by the things they actually know.
It makes a lot. That's exactly what I want, but that's not what atheism says. That's not what atheism
actually it is.
See, but then that's not what. If I look up atheism in a dictionary, that is not what it says. You call yourself an atheist.
Okay.
You have to call yourself something else.
Read me that dictionary definition, and we'll see if it says what you think.
Dictionary.com would that be okay?
All right, sure.
You can also look at our website.
Yeah,
because you can define it. If you yourself define the word, like I can define a word however I want. But it's all about generally what the general public believes the word is. That's general. That's how we define it.
Have you got the definition?
We're not particularly conformist.
Yeah, we're going to have to wrap this up soon. But if you can bring up the definition, then we can put a few minutes on that, and then we're going to move on.
Okay, sure, definitely. While I'm bringing it up, I just want to. The reason my reason for calling is that when some atheists, I'm saying you guys, continue to say that, oh, we're all about empiric data, and we don't believe anything without empiric data, to reject the claim, any claim about the origin of the universe, when you don't know, when there's no evidence for any of those claims, correct? Then you are essentially saying, we believe this not to be true for really no reason at all, because there's no evidence for any of these either,
No, we're saying we don't think that it's true. Give us a good reason, and then we'll modify the.
Well, let me see if I can answer
position.
this a different way. There's thousands and thousands of gods out there, and we can't possibly know. There's no way that anybody can know that all of them are not there. But if you define a particular god, then we can have a conversation about what that particular god is. If in our culture, the ambient God definition is the Christian God, because we have a lot of Christians in this country, a lot of believers, and that's the God that people generally talk about. If you define something concretely, then you can make a concrete claim that yes, this thing exists, or no, it doesn't. Or in the case of like the problem of evil, you can say, well, if it's omnipotent, omniscient, omnibenevolent, if your God has these traits, then you point at the evil in the world and you say this God can't exist. This is a very old argument, right? So if you talk about a particular God, then we can have a conversation. But casting atheists as not believing in God is really, or knowing that there is no God is really kind of a straw man as far as I'm concerned. It's a nonsensical claim, given that you can't prove any sort of universal negative. So I hope that clarifies it.
Yeah. And,
sure, go ahead.
well, we've got to get to other callers. Feel free to call in again.
Definition really quickly.
Okay.
Atheism, dictionary.com. Noun, the doctrine or belief that there is no God. 1.
Okay.
2, disbelief in the existence of a supreme being or beings.
Right.
Yay,
So it's
that's the
either
one.
of those, and disbelief just means that you don't have that belief.
Oh, I understand.
And that's what we generally go by.
Oh, sure, go ahead.
And we make the distinction between strong and weak atheism on that, or positive atheism and
Right.
yeah. So yeah, there are shades of gray.
Okay. I mean, this is great. What I like you guys because you admit that you don't know. But then when people kind of hop into atheism mode, into all you believers are idiots because there's no evidence that there is no God. When there's also no evidence that for whatever belief, whatever they believe, that it can extend to the fact that the universe has has its own natural origin. There's no proof for that claim either.
We try not to believe false things. We try not to believe things without evidence. But,
Yeah, and there are a lot of
we're all
believers
human.
who aren't idiots. And, I mean, even there are a lot of atheists who are idiots.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I mean, we don't draw the dividing line there.
Yeah.
So thanks for calling.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks.
Bye. Simon in Ontario.
Yeah, hello.
Welcome.
Hi.
Hey, Don and Russell, how are you guys doing?
Hey, how are you doing, Simon?
Good. It's a pleasure to talk to you guys. Don, you had a good talk there before about the second coming, and I was just thinking about the analogy of that with the kind of Jewish version, where the Jews aren't waiting for a second coming, but for the
Their
first
Messiah,
coming,
right?
I guess.
Right.
And I was just thinking to myself, like, assuming that happens, like, what happens after that? People are just, like, in a state of amazingness for the rest of eternity, for millions of years? Like,
Well, it's like in
look
Star
back
Trek
at
when
us where we had this turmoil and this build-up to the coming, and then those guys kind of just have it easy. They're born, they live their entire life, and then, I don't know. So,
well, I was going to make an analogy that in Star Trek we know that Spock's blood is green, right? But
Yeah.
but we don't know the color of his bones because that was never discussed in the show. So you're off the script is the problem.
okay.
Yeah, it's like
You've run off the rails of the fiction.
what blood type is the Mad Hatter?
So that's the answer is that the story only went so far. It didn't cover all the eventualities.
Oh, yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah. So I had two things I wanted to do. One was to ask like a quick question on your opinion on the Kuzari argument.
Not
and then
familiar
another
with
thing I
that,
want-
but
Sorry?
what is that?
The Kuzari argument. That's in the Jewish tradition. There's the main argument that rabbis always tell me is that the Jews witnessed God giving them the Torah or the Bible, and there were 600,000 of them. And after that,
600,000, big number.
Yeah, and then after that, they passed down that story. And so the argument is, how can the Jews have this story in their Bible if it didn't happen?
Well, it's funny you should mention that, because last week I saw Christopher Hitchens rise from the dead. Do you believe me?
Oh, I saw it too.
Yeah.
Actually,
believe me more?
It happened. It just so happens that 1 million people were with me, even more than in that story. I can't give you any of their names, and none of them bothered to write it down, but I'm telling you now that there were 1 million people, and so you couldn't disbelieve me if 1 million people agree with me, right?
Yeah, I got a videotape in the mail about Jesus, and the outer material for it claimed that 3 billion people had seen this videotape.
I mean, the thing is, I kid, but some people say things that aren't true. Either they know that they're not true, or they really want them to be true, and they delude themselves into believing
it's oral
it.
history, and it gets embellished along the way.
Yeah, and sometimes they come up with numbers in order to make their story sound impressive that actually, I mean, if it's part of the one story that says, I saw this thing, and so did 600,000 of my friends, just because it says that in there doesn't mean that the 600,000 were there.
And it is like their kind of main argument, which
well, it sucks.
It's just shocking. It's just crazy.
Yeah, the skeptic in me says, well, that's a claim that has to be proven somehow.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if that's the only argument, and you don't have anything else, then it's...
Yeah, and historians actually have ways of working this stuff out. I mean, people call us and say, well, you don't have any evidence that Julius Caesar was alive. But the fact is that it wasn't just like one guy or a handful of buddies who said, I swear I saw this guy, Julius Caesar, do amazing things. A whole bunch of different people from different cultures had kind of interactions with this guy, and there are things about people like Julius Caesar where even if you have a pretty good reason to believe that the guy was real, some of the claims about him, like he was a god in human form and he rose straight to the skies when he died. Historians don't have to believe that stuff. I mean, they can actually figure out which of the things are, which of the things are supported by the historical evidence that they've got from multiple sources.
So, miraculous claims require,
Yeah, for sure.
What's the quote exactly?
Extraordinary claims
require extraordinary evidence.
Was that originally Carl Sagan, or?
Well, it's attributed to him, so that's a good one. So,
can I make one more point?
Sure.
So I was reading Genesis about a month ago, and just in the very beginning, the way it read, it sounded as if it's written from the perspective of a person who observes the world and doesn't know much else beyond what a person would know 3,000 years ago, per se. So the hierarchy of creation is like light, darkness, water, and then earth, and then there's like the firmament, and then the stars, and then the sun and the sky, and then grass, life.
Well, in Genesis 1:1 and Genesis 1:2, there are two different creation accounts, and they conflict with each other, and they're both wrong. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I was saying last
it's pretty
week,
bad when the Bible contradicts itself, right?
Yeah, I was saying a couple of weeks ago when I was on that maybe the Bible wasn't written by a bunch of ignorant nomadic sheep herders who were just writing about the things that fell in their experience. But if it wasn't, then somebody sure went to a lot of trouble to make it look like it was.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, maybe we should hatch a conspiracy theory.
And so, like the interesting thing that I discovered was I was reading the Hebrew version. I read it in Hebrew.
Well, I'm impressed.
Yeah, I grew up in Israel. So the word for firmament was rakia, and that was one word I could never understand what that meant. That's something that kind of never clicked with me. And then I looked it up in the dictionary, and the dictionary said rakia is the nickname that people in ancient times gave to the dome of the sky that separated the water above from the water below.
Yeah.
And so it all of a sudden made total sense. People physically, literally believe that there's a physical dome separating the water above from the water below.
Yeah, and the stars were all pasted to it.
You think that's crazy? Some creationists still say that that's real.
Okay, yeah, you
Yeah.
see the flat Earth creationists, I guess?
Well, I don't know if they're flat Earth, but I think Henry Morris in particular has used that to explain the Great Flood. He was like, you know, oh, well, there was a bunch of water hanging in the sky, and then God let it all go, and that's where it came from.
Yeah, and Genesis literally states it like that. There's water above this dome, and that explains why the sky is blue. That explains why, that explains rain. And I had a hunch that the story of Noah's flood will have some connection to this, and I read ahead.
Right.
And it said windows opened up in the firmament, and then
Kinda
water
like
fell down.
Spaceballs.
So okay, come on. This is like positive proof that this is written by.
It's an amusing story, but don't take it too seriously. Yep.
Okay, we got 5-6 minutes left. So
thank you, Simon.
Thanks for calling.
Thanks to you guys. Happy Darwin Day, and I want to keep watching your videos.
All right, see ya.
Bye.
Yeah, 3 people left on the line. Probably not going to get to all of them, but hang around for the post-show.
I'm sorry, I went a little long today, didn't I?
That's okay.
You can just back me around.
Christian in Michigan.
Hey, how are you guys?
Hi, how are you? Fine, thanks.
I'm doing pretty good. I was calling in to ask you a question. Simply stated, do you think that people can consciously choose what to believe? Because when I told my mom that I was no longer Christian, she made a comment that went something along the lines of, well, it sounds like you decided not to be a Christian and then went out and convinced yourself. And, my thinking is, if I didn't want to be a Christian, then that means that before that point, I already wasn't a Christian.
Right.
So it's not like I could actually decide anything. So I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that, as whether you can actively, consciously choose what to believe.
I think the answer is no. I think you can choose to examine your beliefs and choose to mull them over and see if they make sense. I think you can choose to explore your beliefs, but I don't think you get to choose what you believe unless you're really working to maybe self-delude yourself.
What your mom is talking about is a real thing. I mean, there's something called confirmation bias, which is a well-known psychological effect, where when people start with a belief, they tend to pay extra attention to facts that confirm their belief and ignore things that don't confirm their beliefs. And so once you're in a position, if you're very stubborn about it, then it becomes very hard to talk you out of something.
And that's how I see a lot of people confirming their own faith, is through that. But kind of my point is, if I was a Christian and I actually believed that I was going to go to hell if I wasn't a Christian, then I would do everything in my power to stay a Christian. I couldn't decide not to be a Christian while I still believed that not being a Christian would send me to hell.
Right.
Right.
And that's the whole idea behind Pascal's wager, right? I don't know if you've heard of that, but that's an old thing.
That whole thing hinges on the possibility of choosing your belief.
That's right. Mm-hmm. That's right. Which is one of the flaws of it, I think.
And
one of many.
I mean, really, the most intellectually honest thing to do is to try to withhold judgment on things that don't have enough evidence to confirm or deny them, and try to make as coherent a model as you can with the facts available that you have, but always acknowledge that that's subject to change.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of see belief as almost something that happens to you, and then you realize that it's happened almost after the fact.
Right. I would tell her, I didn't decide not to be a Christian. It's just that I became convinced that Christianity was wrong. That's different.
Or your seeds of doubt blossomed. Doubt's a good thing.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, that was my only question. Well, I've got more questions, so I'll call back in later weeks and get you to answer all those.
Okay.
Very good.
So,
thanks for your call.
Thanks.
All right.
Bye.
Goodbye.
All right, we're going to pick up John in Seattle, and this is going to be the last call, and we may not even get to finish it, but hang on, and we'll talk to you after the show if you want. What's up, John?
Hey, guys. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Finally. This is my first time calling. Great show you guys have. It's really made a positive impact to my life.
Oh, great.
And,
Thank you.
A few months ago, one of my good friends drowned in a pool with me. And it was actually during school. And the school counselor talked to all of us, and he's Christian, of course. And I told him that I was atheist, because I couldn't really talk to him about death because he didn't understand it from my point of view. And he immediately started jumping on me and told me to come in after school, off school, and probably so he can convert me. It's
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's terrible.
That's like insult to injury.
Yeah, I didn't ask him about religion. I just asked him about dealing with death.
Yeah,
I told him my point of view so he could help me understand it.
It's kind of vulture-like, sort of preying on people who are already in a vulnerable state. I mean, it's really not fair to you. Can you ask a quick question that we can answer in like 30 seconds and then hang on after the show?
Do you guys have any advice with dealing with death as an atheist?
Well, I guess as an atheist, I feel like we're very lucky to be alive, and the life is very precious because it doesn't last very long in the grand scheme of things, and we don't believe in an afterlife, and so the time here is very precious, and you need to enjoy it and need to make the most of it as you can, and when people die, you need to remember them, and that's the way they live on. And it sucks. It sucks to have people around you die, but that's something that you're going to have to come to grips with because that's really sort of part of being alive.
Right. Appreciate what you've got when you've got it, and appreciate other people for what they contribute to their lives, and make sure you let them know while they're still alive, the people that you've still got. That's it.
So live a good life is the answer.
See you guys, and hang on if you want to. Bye.